The sun is hammering down on a stadium packed with 50,000 people. And on the far side of a wide strip of packed earth and sand, 20 men are crouching into their starting positions. One of them is named Leonidas. He is from the island of Rhodes. He is lean, barefoot, and completely naked, which in ancient Greece is completely standard. Nobody in this crowd thinks twice about it. What they are thinking about is whether this man can do it again, because Leonidas has already won 12 Olympic gold medals. He won the Stadion, a 200-meter sprint on bare sand, 4 times. He won the Diaolos, the 400-meter race, 4 times. And he won the Hoplitodromos, a 400-meter race run in a full bronze helmet, breastplate, and shield, in temperatures above 38 degrees Celsius, 4 times. His countrymen did not know what to make of him, so they did the only thing that felt appropriate. They declared him a living god. And here is the number that should genuinely stop you for a second. His record of 12 individual Olympic victories stood unbroken for 2,168 years. It was not beaten until Michael Phelps at the 2016 Rio Games, and even that comparison does not fully hold up. Phelps competed across several days with full rest periods in between. Leonidas ran all 3 of his events on the same afternoon, in the same heat, with no recovery time. No modern sprinter has ever come close to that kind of dominance across both speed and endurance at the same time. So the question has to be asked, how? The comfortable answer is genetics, an anomaly. That answer is convenient because it means you do not have to think too hard about what Leonidas was actually doing. But the historians who went back to the original Greek texts found something that did not sit right with that explanation. Something that does not line up with the way we currently think about building athletic speed. Leonidas did not train the way modern sprinters train. What he did instead looked nothing like speed training. And that is exactly the point. The reason behind that comes down to something most people never think about when they think about building speed. It has nothing to do with your legs. It starts inside your nervous system. And the Greeks understood how to train it in ways we have completely walked away from. Here is something that will change the way you think about training, permanently. Speed is not a muscle. You cannot build it simply by running more, or running faster, or doing more repetitions of the same thing. Speed is a signal, an electrical impulse that travels from your brain, down through your spinal cord, and into your muscles, telling them when to fire and how hard. The faster that signal travels, and the more precisely it fires, the faster you move. This means that the single most important training tool for any sprinter is not their quadriceps, or their stride length, or their lung capacity. It is the quality and speed of their nervous system. The ancient Greeks understood this roughly 2,500 years before modern sports science put a name to it. They called their training structure the Tetrad. It was a 4-day training cycle, documented in precise detail by the Greek philosopher Philostratus in one of the oldest surviving coaching texts ever written, called Concerning Gymnastics. He described it simply. The first day prepares the athlete. The second is the day of toil. The third is relaxation. The fourth is a middle condition. Day 1 was a series of short, explosive, maximum intensity bursts, plyometric jumps, rapid stone lifts, reactive sprints, performed just long enough to fully activate the nervous system, and then stopped, deliberately, before fatigue had a chance to set in. The Greeks understood something counterintuitive. The point of day 1 was not to build fitness, it was to prime the body for the harder work that would come on day 2. Modern sports science now calls this neural priming. When you perform short, explosive, powerful movements before your main training session, you activate the neural pathways between your brain and your muscles. You increase what researchers call motor unit recruitment, the number of muscle fibers your nervous system can switch on at one time. And when you then move into your actual speed or strength work, your body responds at a measurably higher level than it would without that priming. The Greeks were doing this in a structured, repeating cycle, 2,000 years before anyone had the technology to measure it. But the Tetrad is only one part of the nervous system story. The other part is where they trained. Every ancient Greek Olympic athlete trained barefoot, not just in competition, but every single day, in every single training session, and almost always on sand. The 2nd century writer Lucian, who documented Greek athletic practices in detail, specifically recommended sand training for building speed. The logic was straightforward. Sand gives nothing back. When you run on a rubberized modern track, the surface has a spring to it. It stores energy from each foot strike and returns some of it to you. Sand does the opposite. It absorbs your effort. Your calves, your arches, your ankles, and your tendons do every bit of the work themselves. And over time, they become significantly stronger and more explosive for it. But the deeper effect is something Lucian probably did not have words to describe. Modern research published in the journal IPMC explains it clearly. The entire sole of the human foot is covered in nerve endings, sensory receptors that send constant real-time feedback to your brain about the surface underneath you. Its hardness, its texture, the exact angle of your foot as it strikes. This system is called plantar proprioception. It is one of the primary ways your nervous system learns to control and refine movement at speed. When you run in a thick, cushioned modern shoe, you place a barrier between those nerve endings and the ground. The information they send back to your brain is muffled, less precise. Your foot strikes later, harder, and less efficiently than it is capable of. Your body compensates. Over time, you lose some of the neural sharpness that barefoot movement builds. Olympic coach Tony Minichiello, who guided Jessica Ennis-Hill to her 2012 Olympic heptathlon gold medal in London, confirmed exactly this when he analysed the methods of ancient Greek runners. Running barefoot on sand, he said, develops ankle stability and neural reception that modern track training simply does not produce. The feet of ancient Greek athletes landing on variable and unpredictable terrain every single session were building a nervous system that was constantly adapting and firing faster. Their feet were live wires. Most modern athletes' feet are asleep. So that's the first layer, the tetrad, the neural priming, the barefoot sand training. It explains a significant part of how Greek athletes built speed that still looks extraordinary by today's standards. But there's a second layer, and it has nothing to do with running at all. In fact, it involves a stone that's still sitting in Greece today, and the inscription carved into it will make you look at speed training in a completely different way. Somewhere in the ruins of ancient Olympia, archaeologists found a stone. Not a decorative stone, but a training stone. A raw, irregular block of rock that Greek athletes used to build strength. Carved into its surface is an inscription that reads, "Bibon son of Phola has lifted me over his head with one hand." The name Bibon is preserved in that claim. The stone weighs 143 kilograms. That is the weight of 2 fully grown men, lifted overhead with a single arm. Bibon was not a competitive strongman. He was an athlete of his era, training in the same gymnasium, using the same methods, living within the same culture that produced Leonidas and every other great Greek Olympian. Lifting that stone was not a party trick, it was training. And here is where the logic gets interesting, because to most modern people, lifting a 143 kilogram boulder has absolutely nothing to do with running faster. Strength is strength, speed is speed. They are different things, trained separately, except they are not. Not really. Here is the physics the Greeks understood and that modern sprint coaches are finally starting to talk about again. Your sprinting speed is not actually limited by how fast your legs can move through the air. It is limited by how much force your foot can apply to the ground each time it makes contact. The ground pushes back against that force, and that push is what drives you forward. More force into the ground, more speed out of it. This relationship is well documented in modern biomechanics research, and it explains why the world's fastest sprinters are not just fast, they are also extraordinarily powerful in their lower bodies. The Greeks were building that ground force through stone lifting, log carries, and loaded jumps with halteres, their version of a weighted dumbbell used specifically for explosive jumping exercises. Ancient medical and training texts describe athletes using halteres to perform rapid swinging movements, jumps, and overhead presses in explosive ballistic fashion. Not slow, grinding repetitions, but fast, powerful, full-body efforts. That explosive strength work directly translated into greater force production at foot contact during a sprint. And because they trained it alongside their speed work, within the same Tetrad cycle, the transfer was immediate. But stone lifting was only one part of what made the Greeks different. The other part was wrestling. Wrestling might seem even further removed from sprinting than stone lifting. But think about what wrestling actually trains. You are constantly reacting to your opponent's movement, their weight shifting, their sudden changes of direction. Your body learns to produce force explosively from positions it has never been in before. Your reflexes sharpen. Your coordination improves, and your muscles develop the ability to contract rapidly and powerfully in any direction, not just in a straight line. Modern research into reactive agility training confirms that this kind of unpredictable, multi-directional explosive work improves sprint performance, specifically at the start, where the first 3 to 5 strides determine whether you win or lose. Greek athletes who wrestled for hours every week, then ran on sand, then lifted stones, were training their bodies to be explosively powerful from every angle. Their nervous systems were receiving constant new challenges, constantly adapting, constantly getting faster. Modern sprint training, by comparison, is largely one-dimensional. You run in a straight line, on a flat surface, in the same shoes, at predictable intensities. Your body adapts to exactly that, and nothing more. The Greek approach built athletes whose bodies could generate speed in a way that was genuinely broader and more robust than what most modern training programs produce. Which brings us to the most revealing fact of all. Leonidas of Rhodes won his final Olympic gold medal at the age of 36. By that age, almost every elite modern sprinter has already retired. Most peak between 23 and 27. Yet Leonidas was still the fastest and most powerful multi-event runner alive, across sprint and armoured race distances, competing against men half his age. That does not happen by accident, and the reason it happened comes down to something the Greeks built into their training from the very beginning, something that also happens to be the most practical thing in this entire video for you to take away and use. Most modern athletes get faster until their mid-20s, then plateau, then decline. The reason is not purely age, it is training adaptation. When you repeat the same movements on the same surfaces at the same intensities, your nervous system eventually stops responding. It has already learned everything this environment has to teach it. You stop making progress, not because your body is done, but because your stimulus is. Leonidas did not have that problem. Every training session exposed his nervous system to something different. Sand one day, stone lifting the next, wrestling the day after, explosive jumping with halteres, long runs in heavy armor, barefoot sprints around a turning post in the blazing heat. His body never fully adapted to any single pattern, because there was no single pattern. There was a constantly rotating system of overlapping physical demands, and his nervous system kept responding to all of them, right up to his last competition at 36 years old. The philosopher Philostratus wrote that Leonidas's success changed how people thought about training runners. He proved that a man could be equally fast across short and long distances, across naked sprinting and heavy armored running, across pure speed and explosive endurance. He collapsed the distinction that Greek coaches had assumed existed between those categories. What he was demonstrating without knowing the scientific language for it, was that training variability produces training longevity, and that explosive strength and nervous system work do not just help you run faster now, they protect your speed as you get older. Modern research backs this up completely. Studies on masters athletes, competitive runners in their 30s, 40s, and beyond consistently find that those who maintain explosive, varied, multi-surface training retain speed significantly longer than those who only run. The ones who add plyometrics, strength work, and varied terrain to their training maintain their neural firing rates much further into their careers. Leonidas was doing all of that every week for over 12 years of competitive dominance. So, what does this actually mean for you? If you want to build speed the way the Greeks did, you do not need a sand track or a 143-kilogram boulder. You need the principles. The first principle is neural priming before speed work. Before any run where you want to move fast, do 5 minutes of explosive jumping, box jumps, broad jumps, or even explosive step-ups. This wakes your nervous system up and increases how many muscle fibers fire when you sprint. The Greeks built this into day one of their Tetrad every single cycle. The second is barefoot, or minimalist footwork. Even 15 minutes a week of barefoot walking or light running on grass or sand begins to rebuild the plantar proprioception that modern shoes suppress. Your feet start communicating with your nervous system more clearly, and your foot strike becomes faster and more efficient. Foot drills, single leg hops, ankle circles, and barefoot sand walks were a standard part of Greek training, and modern elite coaches like Minicello still use versions of them today. The third is explosive strength work. This does not mean marathon gym sessions. It means a handful of heavy, fast, powerful movements, loaded carries, jump squats, medicine ball throws. Do them 2 or 3 times a week. The goal is to increase the force your foot can push into the ground, because that force is what drives you forward. And the fourth is variety. Change the surface you train on. Change the direction of your sprints. Add some lateral movement, some reactive drills, some unpredictable challenges. Your nervous system grows by being surprised. Give it the same thing every week, and it stops growing. The Greeks did not build the speed of Leonidas in a straight line, on a flat track, in a controlled environment. They built it in sand, in wrestling pits, in stone yards, and in the blazing heat of the Olympian summer. And that system produced a man whose athletic record survived for over 2,000 years. The good news is that those principles have not changed. If any of this has shifted how you think about training, there is a lot more where this came from. Every video on this channel is built on the same idea. The ancient world got certain things exactly right, and we have quietly forgotten most of them.